Hello and welcome to the Overton Audios podcast. My name's Colin Chadwick.
And I'm the Blakesy.
And on today's podcast, we'll be talking about the Young Doctor Chronicles recent special, The Fallen.
And we will be hearing some words from Michael Cox about the first Doctor audio titled Home is Where the Heart Is.
And of course, before we start, thank you to the Patreons, Daniel Wild, Anya Patton, Chelsea Lagan,
You're
and
welcome.
Delta Effects. How have you been, Lucas?
I've been good. Thankfully, I've been enjoying the lovely weather that we've been having. It's been very sunny as of late.
Yes, well, I've got my balcony door open at the moment for air. So if you can hear any kind of noises as we're recording, and that's what that is. It's the outside world invading.
No, it's been quite lovely. It's lovely having.
Yeah.
Usually over here we have like a pile of rain, but it's nice at the last couple of days. Have been just nice and sunny, and it's just, you have that golden hour in the evening. Oh, it's lovely.
Yeah, it's very, very nice indeed, and it's been quite nice to have the weather, but it's also that kind of like the weather we've had at the moment is quite nice, but it's not the same as the heat wave. It's nowhere near what we usually have with the heat wave, where I'm sat in front of a computer either working or editing or doing something and just melting.
Oh yeah, no, completely. It's like one of those weathers where it's not clammy. It's just like, it has a nice breeze that comes with it.
No, you're completely right, yeah.
Oh,
but I have found myself actually for the last maybe month and a bit, I've actually had a bit of like a creative block.
Oh.
Yeah, I've not really been in the right mindset I've had to kind of push it in some places, but I've not been in necessarily the right mindset to make things, which is a real shame.
Yeah, but I completely get you. We always have those, like, that period of, like, just, like, you don't know where the ideas are coming from or where the motivation to do that, and mainly real life gets in the way. Like, especially with, like, like social life, your work life and everything, and then when you actually go to sit down and do something creatively, it just, you don't have the means to do it. Usually it comes back quickly. Fingers crossed for you, I hope it does.
Yeah, it's one of those things where around sort of Christmas time, because I always leave myself quite a lot of free time I always leave myself with a lot of free time to try and around Christmas time to get a lot of editing done, because I know that a lot of people aren't recording around, like, obviously around Christmas and December. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm creating a massive editing backlog so that I can edit during Christmas. But sadly, last Christmas, not a lot of that was able to happen in the end. We had a lot of issues with some other productions that had happened around then. And basically what had happened was some people had forgotten some lines hadn't rendered properly. So I was having to kind of like go, oh no, and it's Christmas as well. Like, I wasn't editing on Christmas Day, I should clarify. But like, it was one of those things where it meant that I had 9 audio dramas to edit and was going to really push to get them all done, had a lot of inspiration to do it, and it all just disappeared immediately.
Yeah, no, I get you. You don't want to be texting anybody near the Christmas period being like, here, can you record these lines for me?
Yeah.
It's just, one of those, not the great advantages of technology. Sometimes it goes a bit tits up.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, as a result, out of the 9 audio dramas I planned to edit over Christmas, I got one and a half done.
Oof. And
I don't know, it really, like, because I always put a lot of hype around the Christmas period being a time of me having a lot of free time to do some editing, and because I wasn't always able to do that, it really kind of just, do you know what I mean? It sounds silly, but it kind of just messed with my rhythm, and then ever since New Year, I've really kind of struggled to get back into it again.
No, I completely get you, because if you have that big of backlog, you think, oh, this is so much pressure, and like, it's kind of like subconsciously kind of puts you off it at the same time. But you will get there, sir. You will get there.
Indeed.
I have every faith in you.
But no, it has been really nice with the stuff that we have edited, because actually one of the ones that had a massive production issue was the Young Doctor Chronicles story that we'll be talking about in a bit. Because that wasn't supposed to be a Young Doctor Chronicles story.
All right.
So basically, with the Young Doctor, there were two sort of story ranges that determine when in that Doctor's life it is.
Right, okay.
So you have the Young Doctor Chronicles, which is the first range or era. And then you have the Young Doctor Adventures, which is the ones with Joe Baker playing the companion, Hazel Anderson.
Yes.
This story was written to be a Young Doctor and Hazel story, but sadly, Joe Baker hasn't been available. So when we were trying to record, it was getting close to Christmas, and I needed the lines in September. Yeah. I think that's another thing too, is the fact that some of the audios I was editing at the Christmas period were about nearly 3 months late editing.
But sometimes like, even for me, like, I can't tell you the last time I edited an audio, like a voice plant, but I literally could not tell you when was the last time that I edited something or written something. Like, life just does get in the way, and you can only have time for so much. Like, for me, like, constantly trying, working away and whatever, but like trying to find the creativeness to go and do that, sometimes you fall a bit short. It's not an fault. It's nobody's fault at all.
Well, no, of course, no. It's a momentum that I wish I had. I'm not sat here getting really depressed about it. Like, obviously, I'm a bit like, oh, I wish I need to kind of get back into my mojo again. I want to find my mojo, but not in a way that you don't want to force it, because then you're just going to make yourself more tired.
But the great thing about these things is that it does come naturally back to you, especially when you least expect it, and then you're on this absolute rabbit hole and you're just absolutely going for it, and you get so much done.
Of course, but that is, like, I think, ironically, it was probably something like the Young Doctor Chronicles episode that made me feel this way, because we had to do such a last minute change in it, because the script was written by Daniel Patton as well. So he had written this, or like part of it, and I'd come in and written the other half, and it had been written with specific ideas in mind, and then everybody else had recorded except the companion, and we had to rewrite it to be a different companion. So I think it all feels a little bit chaotic. I think that's probably it, is that it's a bit too chaotic for what I was trying to aim for, but I think it still turned out really well. That's the main thing. But nonetheless, shall we go and have a little listen to the segment?
Yes, we shall.
Off we go. Overton Audios presents.
Come on, Diane, it's just like the park.
Parks don't have tombstones, Kenny. Come on, let's get going. This is disrespectful. People are buried here. Doesn't that bother you?
What the hell? What's wrong with this grave? Wait, no! Please, no! Help!
Coyote to Roadrunner. We are now stationed over Brixton and all telemetry systems are operating.
How many blue police boxes are on Brixton?
It also says here that they disappeared without a trace.
I've been here long enough to see mysterious sorts of things, young man.
Hands above your head and identify yourself.
Josh? Like, what's going on here?
Doctor Who, the Young Doctor Chronicles, The Fallen. Coming the 11th of April 2026 at 12 p.m.
Hello, yes, it's me again. I'm afraid if you want rid of me, you will have to drag me off of this channel, kicking and screaming. And I will fight you. And I will bite you. But that's beside the point. Anyway, we'll take a trip back in time. And I will start off by saying that, I mean, if you don't know me, you probably didn't know this already. but if you have ever interacted with me, ever, you will know that I've been very outspoken about the fact that my favourite Doctor Who fan production of all time, my favourite fan Doctor, just my favourite fan production of all time, one that I have loved for a very long time, is the Young Doctor. I got into the series back when I was first sort of getting into Overton Audios, because I joined the sort of community of fan creators, and I realised that I hadn't actually consumed much fan content outside of like DW 2012, so I started looking into Overton Audios. I don't know what it was, but the Young Doctor series seemed to just be the more accessible of a great deal of them. So that was one of the first series that I properly sat down and committed to. And I listened through Chronicles. That didn't take very long, because they're all, audio renditions of existing fan films. But then I started getting into adventures. And I mean, all I can say is I really, really love that series, with Young and Hazel. I don't know what it is. I could not, for the life of me, tell you what it is about it. But there's something about it that just feels so quintessentially Doctor Who. So it was around about the time that I was listening to Adventures Series 2, around about Catch a Cold, that I really fell in love with that series, and that really cemented the Young Doctor, Pete, as my favourite fan Doctor of all time. And, I wanted for so long to get involved in the series. I was elated when I found out, when I saw the announcement of Inquisition of a Time Lord, because I was like, oh great, more Young Doctor content, this is brilliant. And I, for so long, just so wanted to get involved, but that, at the time, unfortunately wouldn't have happened, because, as far as I was aware at the time, Pete had retired from the role. So I just sort of had to move on and accept that, it's a thing that I love, but, I'm probably never going to get involved. Until, maybe like a year ago, maybe not that long actually, but it was sometime last year, that Mr. Chadwick approached me, which wasn't very difficult because we were already, close friends. But he approached me, we were on a Discord call, and he told me about this thing that they were making that he thought I'd be interested in. And, of course I was like, I'll bite. What do you have in mind? And because of, the unfortunate passing of Harry Gosling, of course, rest in peace to him, I was asked to be the new Josh Mulligan. I didn't really know how to react at first. Of course, other than with the words yes. But yeah, I was. It was very. It was just very, very exciting. And again, I know it's only fan projects, but it's one that I've loved for such a long time, and have been very outspoken about my love for. And now, not only do I was thinking like, oh, I just maybe want to write for it, but suddenly I get to be in it. So then that was when I was told about the whole idea for The Fallen. I just took to it like a duck to water. It's a really cool concept, of course, just adapting a pre-existing story that wasn't necessarily in the show's canon. So they told me about that, and I was given the script, and I just recorded the lines. I gave a bit of thought as to what I would do for Josh. Of course, I had to listen to the other performances from. I took a lot from the original Josh, Joseph Waitman, and a lot from the late Harry Gosling to sort of inform my performance. I didn't just want to do what they did. I wanted to make the role my own. And I could only just... I went, in the end, a bit... Well, I can only really describe it as Ben Jackson-y, especially in the accent department. But... yeah, so I gave the script a read, and I thought it was really great. And again, above all else, I was just really excited to be getting to appear in this series, in this era of Overton Audios, in such a large role, alongside Pete, who is just one of the nicest people you could hope to meet, really. So I remember, this is a little bit dorky on my end from for me, but Connor at a BFI event got him to record a video for me, a little video message, just talking about how I was playing Josh and how great it was. How great they found it, that I loved the series so much, and I had a bit of a fanboy moment. Same can be said about the first time I appeared in a TT audio, and it just happened to be alongside Joanna Baker, so I had a little fangirl about her as well. But yeah, I love, again, if I've not made it clear enough, I love this series, I love the Young Doctor, and I'm very excited to be the new face of Josh Mulligan. Here's to many more adventures.
And welcome back to the podcast. And I'm still here with the Blue Kazoo.
Hello.
Greetings. And now we shall be going into the long-expected comments reading, of which we're going to be reading every single comment. At least we'll try to. For the Magenta War, the big 7-part epic written by Michael Cox. It's called the Magenta War, First Doctor Adventure, and it's something that took, in the end, Michael about 2 years to write.
It's been a long-awaited project of his.
Yes, he wrote it and finished it in mid 2024. And then, of course, we were trying to get other things done. And like Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension 2, he wrote a lot in the backlog. And as a result, we had the Magenta War for quite a bit before we even started recording it. Which, of course, I don't know if you remember, Chelsea, but you recorded your lines for Magenta War 11 months ago.
Yes.
Yeah, back in May.
Madness. Yes. But it's lovely. It's lovely to see, somebody who had a true passion project that they wanted to bring out, and no harm the quality and the quality of the writing plus the quality of the editing. It definitely shows that he put a lot of thought and care into the story, or these series of stories that he wanted to share.
Oh yes, most definitely. Most definitely. But nonetheless, we shall begin by reading the comments. We will go to the Magenta War Part 1. And we start with a comment from Michael Cox himself, saying, "It is marvellous to hear the finished episode. It is just how I imagined it. Sincere thanks to all those involved in the project." And then we had a lovely response. Somebody responded to Michael's comment and said, Bro, I hope one day you get hired at Big Finish.
Yeah,
Superb
I think
work, by the
we
way.
all do. I think we all do.
Yeah. He's a very talented writer.
Very much so. Very much so.
And of course, Michael responded saying that's very kind of you. Many thanks, but it is really a team effort. Which, of course, he's being modest, but it was Michael who wrote these scripts. I never script edit them directly myself.
Mhm.
I don't even think I have ever script edited anything because Michael's always on the ball when it comes to the continuity, and he's got a lot more freedom with the continuity because of the fact that it's the very beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, then we're moving on to another comment from Just MMS, who says, "Oh, it just finished as I was hyped for what would happen next. But it was a really nice episode overall. Despite the small cast involved, it really felt like one of those really nice contained first part episodes." Of course, Michael responded saying that he said, "I was going for a base under siege vibe. People pushed together in a close confinement, expressing anger and paranoia, which works best with a small cast. As to what comes next, well, of all the episodes I've written for this 7-parter, perhaps this one is my favourite," which of course we'll be reading the comments for shortly. And then we have a comment from Gladiator652004 who says, "I quite like Gresham. He seems like a good egg." And Michael responded, "He is certainly very patient with the Doctor." Then we have another comment from Joe Allen Stevens 9166, who says, "It is time for war, the Magenta War. Honestly, I always enjoy the Overton Audios additions to the First Doctor era. I think my favourite thing I get from Michael Cox's interpretation of the First Doctor is how he is obviously less elderly than the William Hartnell original portrayal, but is also very different to Jeffrey Balden, David Bradley, Richard Herndl, Peter Purvis, Stephen Noonan, and the late Siobhan Gallican and others. In particular, as so many of these adventures precede an unearthly child, but keeps the familiarity we know so well within the First Doctor. Obviously, all of these takes on the First Doctor are valid, and I like to think they take on each aspect of how Hartnell brought the Doctor to life. But when it comes to Michael, I find it really easy to see his performance as how the First Doctor sees himself, a seasoned veteran scholar, an intellectual traveller of sorts with a wisdom and respect, but by no means is he as perfect as he likes to be perceived as, which at some points is quite likely a front, especially as he is like a child in a body of an old man. Secretly young at heart, but desperate to be respected by the right people and not bullied or played the fool by the wrong uns, which can be mistaken as a shade of arrogance or superiority by others. I'm reading this completely wrong. So it's because it's such a long comment. Superiority by outsiders. This is just the energy I read off of Michael's portrayal. His is how the Doctor sees himself. The likes of Bradley and Herndl are very much discombobulated and out of time. As well, this incarnation is always old when we see him, but maybe the time vortex would rather make him taller or different in other ways rather than age him up, like it does to the Second Doctor or the Seventh Doctor. Peter Purvis is how Stephen Taylor sees one, like Fraser Hines with Jamie and how he sees his perspective of the Second Doctor. And Hartnell's is, in reality, is the reality, especially left in his time stream, unplucked or untime scooped. And that's what I love about Michael's performance. We see the Doctor as I think he sees himself in the first incarnation. I suppose Michael may disagree on some things or I've misread them, but I like to think that is why he stands out in making a unique take on a role. I never know what more to say about Chelsea Susan, other than that she is so good at playing her, and it's quick to forget it's Chelsea. And the warmth of Susan comes across incredibly well with Michael's First Doctor. The grandfather-granddaughter bond is one of the highlights of these audios, and Michael never lets that slip away in each story. I believe it's one of the reasons I never like to miss an upload. But this is a really fascinating start to an ongoing story, and I love Jimmy Wolf's Gresham, at odds but not antagonistic towards the Doctor and Susan, having to play mediator. Even if her grandfather is the chief male role model and her hero, she will rightfully tell him when he has put his foot in it. Again, I love how this comes across in the dynamic under Michael and Chelsea. Gresham making some scrambled eggs for breakfast, but sounds great, but we need more of that in the future. And of course, Michelle Willows killing it again. She's a good hand in the ensemble and never lets down the stories she's in. I look forward to part 2. Fantastic stuff. That wins probably the award for one of the longest comments we've ever had.
But it was so lovely.
Indeed, but of course, Michael responded.
Oh, yes.
Michael responded, "Oh my good gracious, what a long comment. But seriously, it is very much appreciated. You mentioned that I am less elderly than William Hartnell, but actually he was 55 years old when he debuted as a Doctor, and I'm 57 in a fortnight.
Oh,
he's a young whippersnapper, but I like your analysis of the performance. It is mostly down to the writing, in which I'm trying to tie back into the depiction of an unearthly child. One of the challenges I face is trying to deliver in a faithfully Hartnell-esque fashion lines that Bill never said, because I have no reference point to rely on. But by contrast, when I'm recreating a scene on my own channel, I think I'm actually closer to Hartnell's voice. One of the many things I delight in and value about Chelsea's performance as Susan is that she is superb at judging the energy of every line. Perfect."
Aw, Michael. That's quite sweet.
But then, of course, we go on to part 2.
Yes.
Where we have many, many comments.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Thank you. So we have our first comment on part 2 from Michael Cox, who says, "Sincere thanks to all the cast for their performances, and I would like to offer a particular word of tribute to Chelsea Lagan, who excelled as Susan, who is really under duress in this episode." We have a nice comment in response to that from James Leaper, who's James Leaper, Lone Wolf Audio Works, who says, "And thank you and to Connor for letting me be a part of this. I thoroughly enjoyed it." Yes, it was his debut on an Overton Audios project, playing Private Durkin, who was the person who, I don't know if you remember this episode, Chelsea. It was one where the first Doctor's not really in it at all.
Yes, I remember.
Yes, and they were on the run, trying to get into this capsule, and they get caught and taken to the courtroom.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. And then we have a comment from Sumner Multimedia, who says, "Excellent as ever. I loved recording for this series, and it's so exciting to see it all come together." Michael responds, "Sincere thanks for your work on the project, Connor. I've only heard snippets of your performance from the trailer, but they were enough for me to know that it's going to be superb." Sumner responds, Sumner Multimedia, Connor J. Sumner as we know him, responds saying, "Honestly, Michael, I was rather touched when I was told that you specifically wanted me for the role. It was very nice to know that I'd made enough of an impression to be wanted back, but I sincerely hope to work more with you in the future." And then Michael lastly responds saying, "I certainly echo that sentiment. I hope we can." It's all very positive comments.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
And then we have another comment from James Leaper, Lone Wolf Audio Works, who says, "I thoroughly enjoyed this. Great performance and a great job to all." And then Michael responded saying, "I enjoyed your performance as Private Durkin. Thank you very much for taking part." And James Leaper responds, "An absolute pleasure, my friend. Thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it." And then we have another comment, Chels.
Another one?
Who from Gladiator 652004. And they say, "Well done, Chelsea. Bravo."
Oh, thank you.
And then we have another comment.
Another one.
From TT Productions, Audio Dramas. "Chelsea's performance in this audio drama is underrated. She is so talented."
Oh,
I didn't know you had access to the TT Productions.
Oh, would you stop? Would you stop? I knew you were going to say it. I know you were. Just for everyone listening, it actually wasn't me. I do not have the TT Productions YouTube. I'm just class.
Then we have a response to that comment saying, "You are so right, Abby. I just wish more people would show their support in the comments." Because at that point, the comments were a little bit scarce on this episode.
Yes.
Because the episodes are so huge. They're like about 45 to 60 minutes per episode, and obviously it's a big 7-parter.
Mm-hmm.
And with it being the beginning of the year, it kind of took people a little bit to get back into New Year things and getting back into listening and back into a lot of comments started to come in again, but they were very gradual. And me and Michael at the time were a little bit worried, but no, it's all turned out well. We've ended up with like the most comments on this.
Very, very well.
Yes. We then have another comment from Just MMS. And what do you think they say?
Chelsea, how dare you take over the TT Productions YouTube?
No, they say this is Chelsea's best episode.
Oh.
Let it be shown by the court that her performance was the best.
Well, thank you.
Michael responded, "Indeed so, it would be criminal to deny it." This is just
getting all red and flustered now.
Then we have another comment.
Oh, another one.
From Joe Allen 9166. And what do you think they say?
Chelsea, how did you take over the TT?
No, they say Chelsea proving once more how she can carry a story as the lead.
Oh, thank you, darling.
With a follow-up comment from Michael saying, "She is such a superb voice artist. It was an opportunity not to be missed."
Oh, stop it. Stop it.
But just remember, Chelsea.
Yes.
You are always... No, I can't rage bait you on...
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that you're limited.
I could do better.
You can always do more. Yeah. They say, no, I only do that because, have you heard about this? Like, we will be moving on to part 3, but I just wanted to say, like, it's based on, there was this role in a monarchy called the Humbler.
Right.
And it was back in the like medieval times when the king would walk amongst the people, and they'd all be going, "Oh, you're amazing! Oh, you're yes, my liege! Oh, amazing!" And there would be someone walking behind the king called a Humbler who would just say and whisper in the king's ear, "You are just a man."
Are you my Humbler?
Yes.
Connor Chadwick, Overton Audios, aka the Humbler.
Professional Humbler.
That's it. Put that on your IMDb.
Indeed, I shall. So, moving on to part 3. We have a comment from Michael Cox saying, "A heartfelt thank you to you, Connor, for your superb performance as Tara Lassalon." Now, of course, this is Connor J. Sumner. We then have a comment from Meg Elizabeth 9492, who says, "Oh, I like how you can see a little bit of the later Doctors in Taran's reaction navigating the asteroid field." And Michael responds, "To be honest, when I wrote that scene, I actually took my inspiration from Star Wars A New Hope, which is why the Doctor quotes C-3PO's statement that the odds of successfully navigating an asteroid field are approximately 3,720 to 1. But Taran is a bit of a daredevil pilot like Han Solo." And of course, spoilers for this, but Taran is very much meant to play the archetype of what the Doctor ends up becoming in the later version of the show.
Yeah.
He is effectively the action hero Doctor that we know. The one who runs about. The first Doctor I've always described as, he is the mind. You know, the first Doctor wasn't really one for running about and stopping people. He would make speeches and use his mind. Meanwhile, he had younger people around him to do all the carrying.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's always what's quite interesting about his Doctor, is that he wasn't as hands-on. He was an observer.
Yeah.
And then we have another comment from Gladiator 652004, who says, "Susan and Tara Lassalon sitting in a tree." liking the ubiquitous junkyard. I'm loving this serial, much easier to follow than many a big finish. Then Michael obviously responds saying, delighted to hear that you're loving the serial. I hope you're not suggesting that we do a musical of the Magenta War. I'm not quite sure my compositional skills could quite stretch to that. Then one final comment on part 3 from Just MMS, who says, as many others have said, this has been an excellent showcase for Connor Sumner as Tara Lassalon. And Michael has responded as well, saying he is a splendid voice artist, and I was delighted he agreed to play the role. He has certainly owned the role, which is lovely.
Indeed,
very lovely indeed. So we now move on to part 4.
We're halfway there.
So we start with a comment, of course.
Yes.
From Michael Cox, who says, writing something and even reading it aloud out to oneself is one thing, but hearing it performed is quite another. Thank you to the cast for committing themselves to the characters. It was a great listen. And then someone called Justin Hall 97 responded and said, you are a true genius. That had me hooked all the way through. I cannot wait to find out what happens next. Susan will come back. Yes, one day. And then Michael responds, sincere thanks, Justin, for your kind words, which are much appreciated. However, there will be another twist in the tale before we're done with this story.
Ooh.
And then another comment, no less. I know. From Doctor Who Expansive Multiverse, who writes, a wonderful story with a lot of tense and gripping moments. The mention of Gallifrey by the First Doctor sets both an uneasy and incredible precedent for the next part. I look forward to hearing what Gallifrey was like during this era. And Michael responded, that is very kind of you. Many thanks. Overton Audios has begun to delve into life on Gallifrey in a range called Glimpses of Gallifrey, so that may be of interest to you. See, this is something that I quite enjoyed about this serial, actually, is the fact that we saw Gallifrey.
Mm-hmm.
It is so incredibly rare that in the First Doctor era, let alone the Second Doctor era, that we see Gallifrey. Because the whole point is that he's on the run.
Exactly.
So you never really want to, even if you have the Doctor forget certain elements, you never want to send him to Gallifrey. Because, not the First Doctor, I mean. It kind of ruins the mystique of him being on the run.
Yeah.
And then we have another comment from TT Productions Audio Dramas.
Not me.
Saying, no, I just said it was TT Productions. Oh. And then we have a comment saying, this is such a fun story. And Michael says, thank you so much, Abby. I'm glad you enjoyed it. See, I didn't say that was you. I said that obviously it's Abby. Yes. And then we have a comment from Gladiator 652004 who says, oh, I fancy lunch at Madame Moo Moo's. For context, by the way, Chelsea and everyone listening, that's the name of a restaurant that gets mentioned in the episode.
Oh, right.
Not just like a random, like out of context Michael responds, oh, apparently there's Olfini steaks are meant to be some of the best in the Empire. Mind you might not be as keen once you know what species of pygmy dolphin native to the waters of Stowe. Oh. Do not eat dolphin steaks.
No, we don't.
No. And then we have one final comment from Just MMS who says, I love the comment. I love the character of Taran. I think there's elements to them that even the Doctor was inspired by, especially in some of the things they said. And Dr. Riddiviva says, although the Doctor is not a fan of the CIA, he seems to develop a grudging respect for Taran as their time together grows. God. So that was all the comments on part 4, and I take it away to the Blue Kazoo to continue
I don't think I won't be reading as good as you. I promise you that.
Oh, very well.
I'll try my best though.
Indeed.
Right, so we are on to part 5 of the Magenta War, and we have a lovely comments from Neil Kendrick 4976. These are really good.
Yay!
And we reply from Michael Cox. Many thanks. A lot has gone into this, so it's great to hear that people like it.
Yeah.
And then we have a wee comment from Michael Cox that says, a sincere thank you to all the cast for their performances, but particular mention must go to Connor J. Sumner and Chelsea Lagan for the emotion they brought to the scene between Taran and Susan, and to Adele Jane Harris for embodying the zeal of Magenta. Lots of sci-fi sound design required for this story, and general editorial work in piecing together the lines of such a large cast. So a word of deep gratitude to Connor Chadwick himself, who, as ever, pulls all the strands together superbly. Aww. And then our next, that's ye. And our next week comment is from DSM Driving School. Great stuff.
Yay!
Then we have another week comment from Dova6207. Hey, I just discovered this audio in my recommended, so I'd like to explore your library. I see a lot of content, so I would like to ask, where would be a good place to start? New guide with a very long message. Thank you, Connor. Hello there. I always try to make it easy to start any Doctor's era. From the start. We have the Northern Young Bond, Lackery, Frontier, Irish, Philosophical, and Cravat Doctors to start from. The spin-offs are also a nice alternative. We also make character playlists so you can listen to specific character stories as well as particular story arc playlists too. I would typically recommend starting with Cravat Doctor's era as the earliest point in our present continuity. Then after Series 2, so you can go in any direction you like with your list, and I hope you enjoy. And that's one thing I do really, really like about your YouTube, is that if you wanted to listen to stories with a specific character, you wanted to listen to stories with specific actors, or you wanted to do, like specific stories or anything like that, like you have everything laid out so great, so people can just, kind of pick and choose whatever they like, and they don't have to go scrolling and searching and everything. So I find that is really good, sir. Well done.
Thank you.
Love your meticulousness. Could be better than that. Right, so we have another comment from Gladiator652004. Tara makes one appreciate David Campbell. And then we have a wee reply from Michael Cox. Exactly. I wanted Susan to have a few experiences before she meets David, where love could have blossomed but didn't. There's some very low-level attraction between Susan and Silas Wennick in the Lost in Time series, which is basically Silas flirting a little bit and Susan being wildflowered. And yes, I very much agree. And then we got our last comment on this video from Just M&S. The cast is massive! To say that I was one of many would be an understatement. If anything, I'm glad to have done this, and to be probably one of the first characters in the saga not wanting to give up our main crew for the saga. I can't remember doing the lines for the commander, but listening back, I felt surprised in a good way. P.S. Lovely to have this episode come out just around my birthday this year. Aww. That's great timing. And then we have a lovely wee reply from Michael Cox. Thanks for taking part, Thomas. It was much appreciated. You were great as Commander Bruff. Oh, that's lovely. That's one thing I do really appreciate, is that yes, there's a lot of comments, but one thing I appreciate is that they're all positive.
Yes.
I love the positivity behind all this, and it just shows that, Michael Cox has done a really good job. And you have done a good job, and everyone that's been part of it has done an amazing job. So now, after part 5 is finished, we go on to part 6! We go to part 6 of the series, and I shall be reading comments again. So here we are from our first wee comment. It's from none other than Michael Cox. Plans begin to take shape for the climactic finale, and all the pieces will soon be in place. I can't say any more than that. Ooh. And then we have a lovely comment from Atomic Horrors, which was a reply to Michael Cox. I love your series. I'm making my own series of the First Doctor when he steals the TARDIS with Susan on Wattpad. Jeez, I haven't heard of Wattpad in ages. I was a frivolous reader of the Wattpad back in the day, and now we have Kindle. But I might go back to Wattpad because it's cheap and it's free. Cool. And then we have Michael Cox replying to Atomic Horrors. Atomic Horrors, many thanks. That's much appreciated. Best of luck with your own project. We did an origin story ourselves in 2023 titled "Flight from Gallifrey." I love how as well that, you know, it's like creators of other creators of like different things and give them, you know, feedback and, you know, making sure that they have fun doing their own series and what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we have a comment from Just MMS. I like this one. All the inner character conflict between some of the characters here were very enjoyable.
Yay!
That is lovely. And now, finally, we move on to Pot Savon, which are lots and lots of comments for me to read.
Let me know if you need me to tab in at any point.
We'll see how we go on. Cross your fingers and toes. So we have our first comment from the very Michael Cox. Many, many thanks to all those who gave their talents and enthusiasm to the production of the epic serial. You are all very much appreciated. I would like to offer a particular word of thanks to Chelsea Lagan and Connor J. Sumner for their emotional journey together as the star-crossed lovers Susan and Taryn. To Jimmy Wolf as Gresham's strong, reassuring presence, and to Chris Walker-Thompson as our gloriously sinister villain Hal Rowan. And finally, to Connor Chadwick himself. It has been a long journey as the script expanded from 3 parts to 7. You gave everything, so the biggest thanks goes to you. We heart. And we have a lot of replies to this comment as well.
We do.
So here we have from a wee comment from Shadow Academy. It was an honour to play a small role in part 4 as the ground skimmer desk guard who was sadly cut out by the staser stun from Taran. Haha. And a reply from Michael Cox. Many thanks for taking part, Ian. It is much appreciated. And we have another wee comment from Justin Hall 97. Another brilliant episode and an amazing conclusion to this epic story. Congratulations to all involved. Can't wait to find out where the Doctor and Susan go next. Michael replies, many thanks. That's much appreciated. Lots more adventures for the Doctor and Susan still to come. Hooray! Then we have a comment from Atomic Horrors. The next story, they should meet the monk or the master. Done. And then we have lovely Michael Cox replies. Well, the next episode was written and recorded quite a while ago and doesn't feature either character. The same goes for the episode which follows. However, the monk and the master have both featured on the channel, meeting other doctors and also each other in some great stories that are worth listening to.
Indeed.
And then once we go back, we have our wee main comments. Make the next story, they land on the web planet.
Oh, that's with the zombie.
Zombie. And then lastly, we have a lovely comment from Just MMS. For such a big saga, this was a very nice and contained ending. I'm happy to have played a part in it like the rest of the cast. I will now secretly campaign for a Commander Brophy return. Then Michael Cox replies, well, in a universe of infinite possibilities, anything is possible. I'm just so glad that it was well received by everyone. And, you know, it does show the effort that people put into these episodes.
Yeah.
And it's really good to see, it's one thing from writing a script to getting lines recorded to putting it all together and putting it out, but it's really the comments and people's response to your work that really, makes it all worthwhile. I think Michael Cox and yourself and everyone who's been in this Magenta World series, definitely kudos to you. A round of applause all around.
Oh, thank you, Lucas.
You're welcome.
So, as we've just finished talking about the Magenta War, shall we have a little listen to what Michael Cox has to say about the follow-up story which is coming out? Or by the time this podcast has come out, it will have already been out, which is titled "Home is Where the Heart Is."
That's how we listen.
Oh, yes, indeed. Overton Audios presents
While I was in the library, I came across a reference to a tourist destination called the Singing Towers of Darillium.
The Singing Towers got their name from the fact that the wind passing through the cave system would harmonize with the cave's crystal layer.
What's this? Incoming transmission?
Doctor?
Taralassalon?
Listen, I've changed my mind. I don't care if the Doctor is your target. I'm not putting our lives and my vessel at risk. Do you hear me?
Don't worry, Captain, we're nearly there. 1 minute to interception, relative time.
It's no good. We're crashing.
Run, father! Goodness, it looks like we've landed on a pile of junk.
I hardly think it's a suitable place for a young girl such as yourself.
I am Foreman. Foreman? I suppose it might be the name of the owner.
To think it would come to this. Stuck in a junkyard in London, in England in the year 1963. Where would it all end? I wonder. Yes, I wonder.
Doctor Who, Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension 4. Home is Where the Heart Is. Coming the 25th of April 2026 at 12 p.m.
Home is Where the Heart Is tells the story of the TARDIS's arrival in Totter's Lane. So it's quite a significant thing in the life of the Doctor and Susan. At 1 hour 20 minutes, it's now the longest First Doctor story on Overton Audios. I suppose in some ways it was the story we'd been keen to tell from the outset. The First Doctor adventures began in 2022 on Overton Audios with the release of Enemies of Time. And since then, we've released a further 20 stories. So it's reasonable for people to ask, why has it taken us so long to tell this particular story? I suppose the answer is that in 2022, we were testing the waters to see if there'd be any interest in First Doctor adventures. And so it seemed wise, at that point, to avoid key moments in the Doctor's life. But once we'd seen that there was support, and the range was established, we took the bold decision to tell the story of how the Doctor left his home planet. And Flight from Gallifrey remains the most viewed First Doctor episode at 1,878 views when last I looked a few days ago. All we can hope for is that listeners will like the arrival on Earth as much as they've liked the departure from Gallifrey. Time will tell. Now, A Home is Where the Heart Is may seem quite a simple story, but it wasn't easy to write. It had to fit into established continuity. But continuity isn't entirely straightforward. Susan's wish to attend Coal Hill wouldn't be the main reason for staying on Earth, because the Doctor states explicitly in An Unearthly Child that he's quite contemptuous of the school. You might remember he says, "That ridiculous school! I should have known something like this would happen if we stayed in one place for too long." He also states that he doesn't belong in London 1963. "I tolerate this century, but I don't belong to it." Now, logic would dictate that no one with a space and time machine would remain in one place for very long. Why would they? So there had to be problems with the ship, forcing him to stay against his will. Then there's Remembrance of the Daleks, which suggests that the Doctor went to Earth to find a hiding place for the Hand of Omega. And obviously we accept all that stuff that I've said already. But because we're working in the Prism universe on Overton Audios, we wanted to add a reason of our own, which ties into our own continuity that we're slowly but surely building. And so our other reason is the consequences of Tara Lassalon's hunt for Susan. Now, in the very early drafts, I thought it might be a two-parter. In part one, the TARDIS would land in the middle of what we now call the Magenta War, and the Doctor would use the Rings of Tyche to alter the Emperor's mind, thereby bringing peace. However, the story would end with a mysterious Time Lord agent arriving suddenly and trying to arrest them. In that version, Tara Lassalon had no personal connection to the Doctor and Susan. He was simply a Time Lord on a mission. The Doctor and Susan would escape in the TARDIS, but would only succeed in evading capture because the ship crashes in Totter's Lane and goes dormant, and thereby becomes undetectable. Tara Lassalon would then return to Gallifrey empty-handed. And part two would then explore how the Doctor and Susan establish themselves in the culture of London 1963. However, as I was writing about the Magenta War, which was then getting longer and longer by the hour, the character of Tara Lassalon began to develop in ways I hadn't expected. In time, he became a major figure in the story and its resolution. And once it became clear that the Magenta War was a thing in itself, a 7-parter no less, it was separated from Home is Where the Heart Is. This left me with more space to write about life in Totter's Lane, and all that was needed was a reason for staying there. The idea of crashing was still appealing, and so I introduced a little bit of timey-wiminess into the storytelling. In scene 2 of Home is Where the Heart Is, we have something we've already heard before in scene 4 of episode 5 of the Magenta War. However, whereas we heard it first from Taran's perspective, we now hear it from the Doctor's perspective. I had hoped that some listeners would have picked up on Susan's reaction to Taran when he tells her he'd pursued and then lost them in the vortex. And she says, "But Taran, we haven't been chased through the vortex, and we've never time-rammed anyone. This hasn't happened yet." So, in scene 2 of Home is Where the Heart Is, we reintroduce Taran, only to bring his story to an abrupt close. And as the Doctor says in both this scene and in the one in the Magenta War, "Tara Lassalon? Oh my, I must confess this is rather unexpected. We've met before, and may I say, I'm sorry. Truly, I'm very sorry. Once the Taran story arc was finished, I had to think about whether or not the Doctor and Susan would be integrated into the world in which they now found themselves in Shoreditch. I'm sure in some people's headcanon, that would be very little, if anything, happened from the time the TARDIS landed in Totter's Lane until the time Ian and Barbara forced their way into the ship and they left 1963. But that would be a great pity, as I was convinced that there was scope for stories to be told. Because as the Brigadier famously said to the second Doctor in the Five Doctors special, "You attract trouble, Doctor, you always did." So for me, it seems almost impossible for the Doctor not to have an adventure, even if the stakes are low. Russell T Davies was keen to join sci-fi with kitchen sink drama, and exploring domesticity is no bad thing. It sort of reveals character. So Home is Where the Heart Is explores the adventure, we might say, in inverted commas, of ordinary life in a London that is quite a mix. Sometimes it's friendly, sometimes not so. When I heard the finished version of Home is Where the Heart Is, I was surprised at the length. You know, when you're writing something, you're going through various pages and you're giving instructions to characters and how they're to perform. You know, page count doesn't always indicate how long it's going to be in reality. So I am sorry to our dear editor for everything that had to be done to bring this to production, because it's so many different sound elements are required. Anyway, looking at it on the page, as I say, is a very different experience to hearing the finished product. Now, I was really surprised that the first 20 minutes is fairly dramatic. We've got the chase through the vortex, we've got the crash, and then the spillage of Artron energy, and then the Doctor having to go into the ship to stop it, to prevent local space-time from warping out of shape. But then the following 60 minutes of the story are, I would say, very slow-paced, with the Doctor and Susan just plodding around Shoreditch, adjusting to life on Earth. Maybe we could have cut the story in two, with the Doctor collapsing after exposure to the Artron radiation as the cliffhanger. That could have worked. After all, there's absolutely no reason why a two-parter has to be divided into equal portions. Well, as either a two-parter or as one continuous episode, I'm well aware that many listeners might not like 20 minutes of drama followed by 60 minutes of something slow-paced, where the stakes are relatively low, as in the encounter with Harry Hawkins. But I genuinely think that this reflects the Doctor and Susan finding their feet in a new place, something that would be true of all of us in similar circumstances. Life isn't always significant or exciting. One of the elements that was important to focus on was the concept of home. Well, it's in the title. Where is their home? It's where the heart is. But where's the heart? Now, because the story begins with Taran's quest, hopefully listeners will think back to episode 5 of the Magenta War, where Susan makes it clear that her home, or sense of belonging, is derived from her relationship with the Doctor. As long as they're together, That's what matters. Their companionship is their home, and everything that the concept of home stands for: security, comfort, learning, love, forgiveness. Much as the Doctor would wish to keep others at a distance, there are the good encounters in Shoreditch with Father Kelly and Julie Turner. There's the bad experience with Harry Hawkins and Alfie, and then the comedic one with Mrs. Ethel Jibb. And I'm very grateful to all the voice actors who were willing to take on those various parts. They really did bring them to life very well. Now, admittedly, I struggled for a long time trying to get the balance right. So the Doctor doesn't want to attract attention. He's not interested in forming relationships with the human beings around him. He remains Doctor Who because he's a mystery. Some fans would probably prefer to take a hard line on that. But we also have to consider Susan. She clearly needed more companionship than just her grandfather. In An Unearthly Child, the Doctor chides her for being, "Now you're being silly and sentimental," because she's attracted to the 20th century and the people there she's met. And it all begins, really, I suppose, in earnest, with Julie Turner, who is the Earth equivalent of her own age. She needs a peer group. So this need in Susan helped to settle the issue of why she enrolls in the school, and the Doctor begrudgingly permits it because he cares for her and her needs. Now, I thought that the Doctor would pooh-pooh the idea of attending Coal Hill from the start, and then would offer a better alternative. So I created Hypertech. So Susan is permitted to go to Coal Hill almost as a bit of light relief, as her real study is with the Intergalactic College through an online learning portal. That was quite important for me, because the BBC didn't always depict Susan as a member of an advanced species, even though it was established in An Unearthly Child. Ian Chesterton says, "She knows more about science than I'll ever know. She's a genius." And Susan tells Barbara she'll have read a large textbook on the French Revolution by the following day. It's my constant moan that the subsequent writers for the BBC didn't seem to hold in mind those things when writing for Susan. She was reduced to being the damsel in distress. But in the Prism universe, we've tried to reconnect with the idea that, next to the Doctor, Susan is probably the cleverest person in the room. It's a fine balancing act because we still have to keep Susan recognisable to the depiction in the BBC's seasons 1 and 2. Finally, there was a question of timing. When did the TARDIS land in Totter's Lane? I took as canon Justin Richards' The Time Lord letters, published by BBC Books in 2015. Justin says that the Doctor filed Susan's school application form on the 21st of June 1963. I think he did this so that it agreed with Susan's statement to Ian and Barbara that these have been the happiest 5 months of my life, and that would mean that the events of An Unearthly Child would have occurred on Thursday the 21st of November 1963. So everything was going well, and then The Devil's Chord was broadcast. And oh, the messages that went back and forth because of that. Well, the whole internet probably was going into meltdown. It wasn't just for Overton Audios. But we had a very particular concern. Anyway, we thought there might be a potential problem because the 15th Doctor says that the First Doctor and Susan are already in London in early 1963, which then, of course, contradicts what had already been established by Justin Richards under licence from the BBC. This issue was mentioned in a previous Overton Audios podcast when I hinted that I had a working solution to the problem. Hopefully, listeners will accept it as plausible. So upon their arrival in Totter's Lane, Susan picks up a newspaper and shows it to the Doctor. They see that the newspaper is from 1963, but it could have been discarded days, weeks or months before. Suddenly, one of the ship's Artron energy reservoirs bursts and there is a time spillage, which gets worse and worse. Susan sees that the newspaper's date changes as the energy bends local space-time out of shape. She reads out 9 dates. And as a little authorial conceit, I chose the following dates, and they are significant. So the first one is the 8th of January. And everyone will know, of course, that that's William Hartnell's birthday. The time then flicks forward to the 17th of December, and that's Jacqueline Hill's birthday. Then it pulls back to the 3rd of June, which is William Russell's death. Then it pulls forward a short distance to the 16th of June, which is Carol Ann Ford's birthday. Then it pulled back to the 23rd of April. That's the date of William Hartnell's death. And then pushes all the way forward to the 19th of November, which was William Russell's birthday. Then it's pulled all the way back to the 18th of February, which was the date of Jacqueline Hill's death. It leaps forward to the 7th of April, which is the birthday of our own dear Connor Chadwick. And finally, the last date that is read out by Susan is the 7th of May, which is my birthday. And then after those dates, the newspaper changes so quickly that it's impossible for Susan to read those dates out. So we don't know at what date the Doctor stabilises local space-time. Admittedly, it's not the same as saying that the Doctor and Susan were living through the first half of 1963 for days and weeks, etc., etc. And that seems to be what the Devil's Cord is suggesting. However, I do think that this approach respects the fact that the TARDIS did place its passengers in early 1963, even if it were for mere minutes. So there you have it. The origins of Home is Where the Heart Is. A story which draws to a close the adventures of the Doctor and Susan travelling together after their flight from Gallifrey. What we could call their maiden voyage. It establishes them in Totter's Lane and gives them 2 reasons for remaining on Earth. The repairs to the ship and Susan's wish to experience firsthand the life of an ordinary young person in the London of 1963. I suppose it goes without saying that this does not bring to an end the First Doctor adventures. We still have a number of other stories to tell, many of which have already been written and feature characters introduced in this story. but of those future planned releases, no more for now can be said. Watch this space. And after that brief tease, it's back to the podcast.
And welcome back to the podcast. And I'm still here with the Blue Kazoo.
Hello.
Greetings. So, obviously, going off of what Michael Cox said in Home is Where the Heart Is, what did you feel about Home is Where the Heart Is? This is the story where, you know, they end up in the infamous junkyard.
Like, for me, like, honestly, people are going to hit me when I say it. I have not watched much of Hartnell. I have not. Oh, I know, don't. But I did have a chance to see the lost episodes that were found.
Yes.
I watched them when they all came out, and I think it was I remember texting you being like, for me to properly listen to a full episode of Hartnell, Michael Cox has got on the money.
Mm-hmm.
He has got it on the money, like the mannerisms, everything. And yes, even though the episodes didn't have Susan in it, I feel that because Susan was a complete and utter accident, which most of my characters are. It's me trying to do an impression of it, and this is where it's led me. And the comments, especially when they say that, you know, people like forget that it's me doing it. I'm just like, because me and Susan sound nothing alike.
Yeah.
Take the accent away, but we sound like our vocal ranges and everything is completely different. And I'm just really glad that people are enjoying this story, and I am doing Susan justice, and that Michael Cox is happy. And I'm yet to meet him in person. I would love to meet him in person because it will be well past to get a wee photo shoot done.
Yes.
But they're like Susan and the Doctor, especially in this series, have had such a big journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what Michael Cox has done is amazing. And now they've landed in the junkyard where their story basically begins for them. So it's kind of like a lovely full circle moment. And I feel like, you know, I think especially for this being Michael's, you know, passion project as well. Like, I hope that he's very, like, especially from comments, he's very happy with how things have went. And I'm very, very proud and very happy that I get to be a part of it. And be a part of the story and playing such, especially in Doctor Who ways, such an iconic character.
Yeah.
And I'm doing her justice. And me and her are nearly the same height anyway. So, you know, when it comes, if you ever don't shit, Michael Cox, that will be the right enough heights for it. It will be accurate.
Yes, it will.
Yes.
But yes, indeed. And like you say, they've landed in the junkyard and they're about to connect up with the show.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, they look to the future in that regard. But we should be looking to the future too. For there are things coming soon on Overton Audios. The next thing to come out after Home is Where the Heart Is, which is obviously out at this point of the podcast release already. So this Saturday, there'll be a new trailer release. But if you've listened this far into the podcast, you get to see something, a little something. Shall we have a little look at it?
Let's have a listen.
Overton Audios presents.
This man you spoke of, the Master, you implied he wasn't good.
I prefer to remember the best of him. Where are my friends?
I'm not even in my time, and my daughter's all alone.
I need to find my dad. I think he's in terrible danger. I'm sorry, Patrick. I'm sorry.
There is something going on here. The disappearance of my friends, but I know far more than you think I do.
This man, he can't just come back into my life and tell me all this stuff, all of this awful crap, and expect me to help him save the universe. He's insane. That's all he is, an insane old man.
When I first met you, you were lost, confused, you were a broken man.
I made my decisions, and all decisions have led me here. This is where my story ends.
Master! No! You can't do this!
Doctor Who Resurrected 1 Trial of the Master, coming the 9th of May 2026 at 12 p.m. And that was the trailer for Doctor Who Resurrected 1 The Trial of the Master.
Dun dun dun.
Which is the first of the final 3 Cravat volumes before he regenerates. And I've had a couple of questions about this, about why he is an old man. It is how it becomes very evident to me that nobody heard the last volume. Because some people have gone, wow, you've jumped a few years into the future. Nope, this takes place from Cravat's perspective, this takes place immediately after the last volume. We had the Cravat Doctor fall into the time vortex, but barely hold on to the TARDIS, and the time winds aged him up. So we've aged him up to sort of like, and it's my way of kind of paying homage to my favourite Doctor, William Hartnell. Because I'd always played him as kind of like a Hartnell-esque style, but a lot of people have actually seen him more as the Sixth Doctor, because the Sixth Doctor always played the Doctor as kind of like a young Hartnell anyway, did the same lapel thing. So I wanted to age him up so that it kind of, I wanted to also give him limitations as well. I wanted to try and write for a Doctor who was old.
Yeah.
You know, when Cravat usually goes running about, you know, he's able to. Meanwhile, you'll see in this upcoming volume and future volumes that you'll hear everybody else run in first and start talking, and a little, like maybe a second or two behind, there'll be another set of footsteps and the Doctor arrives. It's those little small things, you know. It's those small things that help, but they change the context of it, and that's what I've always been like very interested in ever since we said we want to make him old. But obviously as well, this volume acts as a finale for everything we've been doing with the first 4 volumes of Mastermind as well, which has been following John and Harper's iteration of the Master. Obviously, the last time the Master appeared in a Cravat Doctor story was 6 years ago in Resurrection Season 4. And he was taken away by the Guardians of Time to serve a sentence, and now here he is put on trial by the Guardians. But for those of you who've been attentive, but it doesn't affect your listening of this story, the Master's actually been on the run from the Guardians, and he's now been recaptured and has been put on trial. But it doesn't affect your listening if you haven't heard that, because it's an extra bit. You can still have not heard the first 4 volumes of Mastermind, and this will still make sense for you. There are callbacks to that. Those 4 Mastermind volumes in this story, but they're not enough to destroy your experience.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, I hope everyone enjoys it when it comes out. And of course, I imagine it feels very weird for you, Chelsea, because you and I have been kind of doing this since the beginning.
Oh, no, I'll get emotional. No, it is very much like, you know, like it's nearly coming up to 10 years.
Well, yeah, next year, 2027, will be 10 years for you.
Yeah, it'll be 10 years of knowing you, being cast in as Julia, like the Doctor's companion. So for me, this is a very strange moment to have.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Julia has been the longest character that I've ever played, like ever. Oh. She's the first character that I've played and the longest. So like, and especially all the adventures that her and the Doctor went through, and like, I don't know, it's kind of like I'm an outsider seeing him get old, and I'm like, I can't do it. I can't go.
Oh.
It's going to be an emotional one.
It will be.
Very much so.
This volume marks the beginning of the end. But nonetheless, it's not something we have to think about right now because
exactly
it is the end of the podcast.
Oh, already.
Of course. And of course, thank you all for listening to this podcast, for bearing with us through the comments reading. And until the next month, I suppose, we will be, next month we will actually be reviewing and discussing the volume that we've just been talking about.
It's very exciting, isn't it?
Indeed. What fun times. So all we can say is, I suppose, is thank you very much for listening, and we will both see you next month.
See you next month, everybody.
Bye-bye.